ahead. I will hand it over to Jen Saha, who is the ultimate connector and female founder and CEO of Golden Bridge Strategies.
Thank you, everyone. I wear a few hats. One of them is with Government Affairs Director for TechCA. Another one is as a chapter lead for Women in Data and a California government chapter. And today I am wearing the hat of your moderator. So excited to be here and to have everyone participating. I want to introduce Leanna Bailey-Crimmins. Leanna is the state's Chief Technology Officer. We're incredibly lucky to have her. She served in a number of roles in government, and she is also a woman, which makes us even more excited. Checking that diversity box that Sadie mentioned. So Leanna, I'll turn it over to you to just give some comments about sort of what we're here to talk about today.
Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tech California, and also Women in Data. It is a pleasure to see all of you and see some familiar faces out in the audience. Hopefully, at some point, we can see some folks on the Zoom session as well. So Amy Tong, Secretary Amy Tong, was supposed to be here today. Unfortunately, she had other plans that conflicted, so she wanted me to send her her goodwill to this group. She believes in what we're doing, believes in data. Many of you know that Governor Newsom recently had appointed her the Secretary of the Government Operations Agency. Big role, and she is a fellow, she started off as a coder, most of you know, and data is near and dear to her heart. And she has seen firsthand, especially leading over when she was a state CIO, how we can utilize data to make a big difference across the state. She led the way when it came to creating the dashboards and all the things that were necessary during the pandemic. She continues to be a leader, and we're just really lucky to have her in the secretary role. Thank you so much. I was so introduced, a state CTO. Currently, I have 34 years in state service, 8 different departments, so lots of different roles. What makes me unique is not only have I been on the technology side, but what Jennifer also knows is I spent 3.5 years on the business side. So not only do I understand what it means to be a custodian of data and the things that we do in technology, but also what it means to be on the business side and utilizing that data to make key business decisions. So I am not the only speaker today. So Jennifer, maybe we can introduce the other panelists as well. Would that be great?
I just want to make sure we have them all on the phone before I start to.
We have Joy on the panelist, so
great.
She turns on her camera, we'll see her.
Okay, we've got Joy Bonagro on the phone. Joy is the state of California's Chief Data Officer, also a female, woohoo, and has really put into place an incredible data strategy for the state of California. We're incredibly lucky to have her and her breadth of experience. Also, Adam Dondro is hopefully on the phone. Okay, yeah, great. Adam was recently appointed the director of the Office of Systems Integration, which serves as the Health and Human Services Agency's sort of project management, data oversight. He also serves a dual role as the agency information officer for the Health and Human Services Agency, which, not to disparage any of our state agencies, but HHS has done an incredible job of managing their data program in the state. So kudos to Adam for helping shepherd that process through. Anybody else on the phone that we should recognize? Bill, is Kathleen Webb on?
She is not.
Okay.
She's supposed to be here person, so
Okay. We'll keep an eye out for her. Just flag us if anyone else jumps on that we want to recognize. We'll certainly have sort of an open forum sort of discussion with these individuals on the phone, as well as the people in the room. I think we have time and enough space in the agenda to sort of go around. I'd love to have everyone introduce themselves, maybe say your name, your organization that you work for, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah. Maybe we'll start with Charlotte.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlotte Furtado. I am an account executive with SAS Institute, and I work with the Health and Human Services Agency to help them with AI and machine learning, and really just kind of move the needle to using data to improve health outcomes for our population.
Hi, I'm Nicole Samaski, and I work for Encore Consulting and Business Development. We do work heavily in health and human services space. That's one of our primary verticals, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Laura Fickle with the Economic Development Department at the City of Rancho Cordova. We are very thrilled to be invited today because we have only just begun our relationship with women in data.
Aparna Jain, I am the Microsoft Azure Specialist at State of California, and my role is to help our government agencies adopt cloud computing technologies to solve complex business problems and create an impact. And I'm specifically very excited to be here because AI is a topic that's dear to my heart, and I really think AI has the potential to solve some of our complex problems in society today. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Untitled Chapter of the department and in the city of Rancho Cordova. You know, we're just doing a lot of different stuff right now. We're trying to figure out our data analytics and what we need to be doing with it and need to be decision for.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa B. I'm an entrepreneur and an AI expert. I focus in on the areas of privacy, safety, and helping communities online. I advise for multiple CEOs of startups, and I also work with some of the largest tech companies in the world, helping them think through how to take policy and actually implement real-world solutions to enforce that policy.
I'm Sunny Mojinier, and I was the 30th woman ever elected to the California legislature. Just recently started a museum that encompasses the history of what the women have done in the last 100+ years in the state of California. So I'm here to connect with all of you and see how you can help me with all the things that were from the last century we got right into this century. So anybody has any connections can help me with any of that, I would love to talk with you. Thank you.
Jennifer Mojinier, I work with TechCA as their business development and membership recruitment. And I'm happy to be here because this is part of my role as well in the technology world. Thank you.
I'm Megan Maston. I work for a small business bar in the area called Community Technical Solutions. We sell hardware, software, and consulting services, but it's really cool to be here. I didn't know that there were so many women in the industry, so it's nice to not feel alone.
We invited all of them, like this is it now.
We have 3 extra seats.
Hi, I'm Jessica Ajinachik. I handle events for TechCA.
Bill Bailey, with TechCA.
Ethel Smith, I'm with Women in Data. I'm amazed in all of the people I see here today. So thank you. I can't wait.
JP, Women in Data.
I'm Melissa McBain. I'm a data scientist for Principal Financial Group, and I'm on the board of Women in Data. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Lieberman, and I'm also with Women in Data.
Hi, Lauren Leathers. I'm with Cambria Solutions, and I lead their Health and Human Services market in California. So excited to listen and learn and participate.
Hi, Ann Shook with SAP, one of the founding members of TechCA. This is exactly what we wanted to happen under TechCA. And you know, despite sort of some of the old thoughts around SAP, we actually are really heavy with all of our technologies and machine learning and AI and some really state-of-the-art cutting-edge sorts of things that we're doing with data right now, including building the new water billing system for California, which leverages 50 years of data every time they send a bill out to our water contractors. Right, so lots of good stuff going on. I'm glad to be here today.
So I will maybe tap Joy, as she sort of is our chief data officer on the phone. Joy, I've read through your data strategy, as I'm sure many of us in the room have as well. Super impressive there. You touch on a lot of what I think we'll probably be discussing today, but maybe can you just for us sort of talk through some of your strategies and where you're at in sort of achieving some of the goals with the data plan?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm not able to be there in person, but it looks like a fun and lovely crowd. Yes, my name's Joy Bonaguro. I'm the statewide chief data officer. I actually was a CDO, the first CDO for City and County of San Francisco. And so sort of have multiple levels of government experience working in this space. For those of you who haven't read the data strategy, and that is fine, you don't have to. It's there to help guide my work, not necessarily has to be read, but to summarize, it's built around the analogy that in order to successfully navigate the data landscape, we need to intentionally build the data roads, right? So we don't have roads to nowhere, or disconnected roads where you can't get around, which is kind of how things are right now because data is built in silos traditionally. But if we're going to have more, data roads, so to speak, we need to make sure we intentionally craft the rules of the roads, when to yield, when to stop, when to slow down, how to make sure that those exchanges actually exchange, right? All that good stuff. And then lastly, we need to boost the travelers to make sure we have the right level of data literacy across different sort of personas and groups of folks, not just our data teams, to really use data very effectively, right? And so those 3 goals are meant to be sort of sustainable. There's 10 additional objectives. I will not get into that, but maybe I'll sort of focus in on some of the portfolio we're doing around AI. So one of the things that we're working on in the AI world is in a past life when we went to introduce data science as a service in San Francisco, and that was a lot of fun. Can send plenty of materials on that. One of the things we confronted was there was a lot of news reports about ethical AI risk at the time, right? So this was, circa 2016, 2017. And there was a lot of what I called hand wringing, but no practical guidance. And so to support our data science activities, we developed the AI and Ethics Toolkit. So I co-authored that back in 2018. It's essentially a risk management process to wrap around data science and AI and machine learning projects. But we generalized it to algorithms more generally for the purposes of, if you're data people, sometimes the best model fit isn't the fanciest model, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't still be thoughtful about your ethical approach. And so we're actually essentially updating that for the state, and we've done user testing on what we're calling an alpha version of a new toolkit that we can release. That's one piece. Also, another piece is we'll be building out, again, data science as a service. And we will be hiring in that. So if anyone wants to explore doing AI and machine learning in the public sector, which is a special beast, actually one of our former data scientists wrote a blog post on that back from our county service. So happy to share that. And so we'll be building out that team and function. And the purpose of that will not be to do all AI work for the state. That's just silly, right? That shouldn't be fully centralized. It'll be a combination of providing hands-on demonstration projects of the art of the possible, because an internal survey suggested that while a lot of people are interested in AI, and we'll be focused more on predictive analytics, that there wasn't as much adoption as there could be. So that'll be a combination of demonstrating the art of possible, developing the business vocabulary around what's an AI project versus a dashboard. And like, dashboards are great, they're not AI, right? And so there's that sort of educational piece to do there as well. And we'll do that. And then there will be training and professional development strategies around what will be what we're calling Cal Academy, which is not the museum, but it will be a platform on which to lift and modernize data and service innovation skills across the state of California. And happy to answer questions about any of that.
So Joy, I love to hear that the state's going to be hiring. And I think it is a relatively new kind of concept to have the idea of data scientists as state employees and a state function, as opposed to farming it all out to the private sector, which, trust me, plenty of people in this room love that too. Can you touch a little bit, and Leanna will want to get your take on this too, about the role of diversity in hiring for these data scientists, or really for any technology or data role that you guys may be looking to recruit for, and maybe some of the challenges that you encounter as you're trying to do that?
Do you want me to take that first, Leanna, or do you want to?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I think the first step is to be incredibly intentional, right, about diversity. You don't put the like blurb on your website and cross your fingers, right? That's just plain silliness, and it's frankly offensive. So it's about being really intentional. So our team is actually literally right now working on what we call our diversity checklist. And so we're coming up with a list of steps that we want to do, everything from running our job descriptions through Gender Decoder. Some of you might be familiar with that, which essentially looks for words are associated with masculine versus feminine. So if you put things through gender, and of course, we want to keep analytics in an analytics facing job description, but like being a great conqueror or working on super speed, right? That's very, sort of masculine, like Silicon Valley language that we don't want to use in our job descriptions. Instead, it's about collaboration and building capacity and partnering, right? And so, doing very sort of tactical things like that to one, unpacking the hiring process, right? State hiring is complex. And so we'll be there's already a wonderful sort of like how to apply that the Office of Digital Innovation has available. We'll be linking to that, but we'll also be doing webinars on like, what does it mean to join this team? What does this team look like? So sort of demystifying not only the hiring process, but the team we're trying to build so people can sort of select in where they fit. A couple other sort of tactical things. All the research says women, essentially they want to meet every mandatory requirement, and on average men are like, oh yeah, I got this, and they only meet like 70% of the requirements. And so we're being very judicious about what is actually required. And then the other thing is having a thoughtful and balanced interview process that really allows people to both do hands-on functional and show what they're capable of, as well as the sort of traditional sort of behavioral or interview panels. And then of course, outreach, like lots of outreach. I'm getting very loud about hiring on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we actually maintain in our hiring manual, we literally have a list of organizations that are focused on diversity, inclusion, and hiring, and we add to it as we hear things, and we sort of harass them and put our stuff out there. And then I think the last piece is the work we can do in state government is incredibly high impactful. And so the messaging around that impact, I think, appeals to a broader audience and people with broader experiences. We actually want people who have those broader experiences. So the impact work we can do is more informed and shows that breadth and depth of different backgrounds and history, which will make our jobs better.
Anna, anything to add there?
Well, Joy's always hard to follow. She's always so public. I will just say that in addition, basically creative and innovative thought comes through diversity. I mean, we all know that, and diversity is more than gender, culture, and race. It is education. It is diverse backgrounds. I always say that, people are like, oh, anybody could be replaced. And I don't really believe, I mean, they could do the job, but we are all unique individuals, and what we bring to the table is unique. And so I agree with Joy that the whole recruitment, people should see themselves across the table. I'm old enough to remember that, there was only probably 2 of us in our computer science course, right? And kind of breaking that glass ceiling for a while, when it really was, again, not everyone looked exactly like me in the field. But at the end of the day, I was able to prove myself. And so what I like is, as you were saying, it's not just questions, but providing scenarios where creativity and innovation and showing how people problem solve and how they think. There's not really a right or wrong in the whole recruitment, but it really shows that diverse thought. And that allows you to decide, is that the gap that you're trying to fill in relation to that particular position? In addition to data scientists, I also, coming from the health arena, I have a lot of researchers. So health research, again, how that data gets utilized, the data stewards are on the business side. So I may be, giving the analytics tools and providing the data lakes and all those, the technology, but all the governance came from risk, compliance, the business areas. So I think just realizing that women in data is more than just women in IT. And I just want to make sure that everyone, yes, I got the thumbs up. So always looking at, we don't want roads to nowhere. we definitely want to. And there's been a lot of success that's come across. And again, AI is different than, analytics and all of those different things. So I would say also increasing internships. I don't know if most of you know this, but my first career, I started in the LEAP program, which is actually from a disability perspective. There's a lot of programs that bring diversity in from with people with disabilities. And there's all these opportunities to come in. I also started as a student assistant before that. So sometimes we forget that I would have not have joined the state if I wouldn't have actually interned, fell in love with the work. So mentoring, informal job shadowing, and then obviously giving people opportunities that maybe they would not have been able to have in their career. So I just feel like, adding on to Joy, there is definitely an opportunity, but just think of diversity more than just, we all bring diversity of points, and that's what we should be looking for.
So Sadie, I want to ask you, because it's sort of the foundation of women in data to sort of increase and recognize this diversity. How can we really drive towards increasing this diversity, and what are some of the strategies that you've seen be effective?
Well, I'm just adding on to everything that's been said. So yes, ditto to all of that. But I mean, we've broken it down into 3 core areas, which the first is awareness, right? And probably you've heard the term, you can't be what you can't see, right? We need people in those positions to see that, oh, a data science role is something I can be, or a researcher role is something I can be, to have those internships, right? To have those opportunities to see themselves in those shoes. So the first is the awareness aspect, to be able to show that we have the awareness to see themselves in the shoes. And then once that happens, then a lot comes into the education side of things, whether it's traditional education through a bachelor's degree or master's degree, or the opportunity for education that's continual now through MOOCs and boot camps and continual learning opportunities. And then last but not least is there has to be a pathway to advancement, right? So we're lucky here to have wonderful female leadership and diverse leadership in the room, but we want to make sure we're not only creating the highways, but also the pathways to onboard onto those ramps. So continuing to make sure we have that support throughout someone's career is essential to making sure that we can continue the momentum for diversity that's being had.
So I want to talk a little bit about best practices, and I'm going to open it up to everyone in the room, but I first want to point to what I consider to be sort of a best practice in this area. We have Adam Dondro on the phone. Adam's been the AIO at our Health and Human Services Agency in the state, and what I consider to probably be one of the more diverse data programs, probably nationally, that I've been able to observe. Adam, can you share a little bit about sort of how you've aligned resources, how you've sort of captured that diversity, and any plans for where you guys are heading from here?
Yeah, thank you. I tried to slip in there quietly. I was just hanging in the background because I love listening to Joy.
I caught you.
Yeah, I think for us, it really started at the top. So for the last 5 to 7 years, from the secretary on down through the organizations, there was really a priority put on diversity and on the data. And you see it with our current administration in particular. Dr. Galley, our secretary, has laid out the key principles by which we want to operate as an agency: data-driven decision-making, whole person care, and diversity. 3 of the top 5 things that he's listed. Right. And so it's really setting that from the top expectation, and then obviously working to drive that down. And so structurally, I think one of the things that's been different about Health and Human Services for a long time is recognizing that these overarching things around diversity, bringing good people in, they're part of every executive's job, right? And we're not the first agency to put these principles out there. But as everyone here knows, executives are busy doing their day jobs, and carving out the time to put in what's taken to undo 200 years worth of doing things differently, it doesn't often happen. And so we've done things like creating the Center for Data Insights and Innovation within the agency, where their whole job, right, is to pull all the things you all have been sharing out of the day-to-day operational shops within the departments who need to make changes, but are so busy doing the data work they've been doing that it's hard to lift their heads up. Now we've got centralized at agency, a team of folks with resources whose whole job is to help create that, right? Which then frees up the department's ability to come along with those things. Similarly, we're literally right now hiring our first chief equity officer, advisor to the secretary. Whole job is to step back and look at the things you've been talking about, right? And I really like Joy said it in a way that reminded me of a comment that I literally keep posted on my wall from our prior Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She said, if you're not being intentionally equitable, you're being unintentionally inequitable, whether you realize it or not, right? And so really putting that into everyone's thing. And what I love about it is it's a bit circular with this data conversation, because you need to use that data to intentionally look at how you're doing, right? If you haven't looked at the makeup of your organization, if you haven't looked at, right, the gender and ethnic makeup of the people that you're hiring at as granular level as you can, then you're not putting it in people's faces. And in government, we don't do that well, right? We don't like to put bad information out there because we get nailed for it, right? But good leadership says, I deserve to be, right? If I'm not doing it right, then it needs to be in my face. And that's what'll get people to start making those changes. So there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I love everything that's been said, but I think for CalHHS, that's a big part of it, that top-down leadership and that intentionality of putting people in their job duty to be handling these things.
So I'm going to use Joy's data strategy for a minute and just cite some of the barriers to data use that she points out in here. And it's going to be picking on the state a little bit, but it's not saying anything that everyone hasn't probably already encountered. Finding and accessing data across departments is a top barrier. Data consistency and quality is a top barrier. Staffing and staff skills are common and related barriers. Leadership support may be a common challenge. Resistance to data sharing and privacy and legal concerns. I'm not saying anything that you guys probably haven't already heard, and people on the phone and sitting at the head of the table here don't deal with on probably a daily basis. What are some of those best practices? And honestly, this is an open question to people in the room as well, because a lot of you that work in the industry deal with these issues in other jurisdictions, in local governments. What are some best practices for overcoming some of these barriers that we can share among each other and among jurisdictions?
I will say at CalPERS, we have 79 different disparate systems that went into one big monolithic system. And you did a lot of data cleansing, but there was still data that was in, the system that, retiree from one system was a different retiree, meant something different in another system. And so I'm probably speaking to, it's preaching to the choir, but data governance is big. I think you need to start internally. You need to have good data stewards. You need to have a business glossary and basically a data dictionary and nomenclature on how you are going, and the policies that are driven around that, how security and related to data classification, because just by putting the data all in one place and calling it good is not enough. Especially when that data, especially at CalPERS, was used in academia at UC Berkeley and Harvard in order to, obviously non-identifiable data, but in order to see how we were doing in relation to diagnosis, cost, where it was an integrated system or better than a PPO system. All that data was helped to make business decisions, but it is only usable if you sit down and actually do the hard work at the governance side. If departments could do that, start small, I think obviously as an exchange perspective, it makes it much easier. Many of you know recently the Broadband for All initiative. And so what we've been looking at is taking the CPUC data relation to, where individuals need broadband, and then there's also the Caltrans where the freeways are. So bringing that data together allowed us to have a map and make good decisions. But if the data was not great or had bad quality in its own department, bringing it together doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So at least that's my experience, and I'm assuming my panelists have thoughts around that as well.
I can give an example from public-private sector, if you guys want to hear something from that area. So the last 2 years, I've been working alongside UCSS Center for Digital Healthcare Innovation around looking at how do we get more novel models in clinical settings in medical care. Is in order to train AI and improve through FDA processes, you need a very, very diverse data set, which typically doesn't live in one house. So we've been leveraging confidential computing and zero trust technologies to be able to take the models to the data in a secure way that reduces a lot of the government's requirements in order to do that, to accelerate that process. So there is a product now in Microsoft Azure in the marketplace from a company called Beekeeper AI that is a spin out from that project. And they've developed something called Astro AI that reduces the time and the cost by millions of dollars in years to be able to collaborate on sensitive and regulated data sets. I think the future is going to be a lot more around how do we use these newer technologies with federated learning and with confidential computing in order to not require so much overhead for trust, because nobody can actually see the data. And the model can still get the training that it needs to be diverse enough to work as well in healthcare for somebody in Bangalore as a woman versus a man in Boston. It's going to require new ways of thinking and new ways of approaching. And I think that that's where magic happens when the public and private sector. I'll be around.
That's really awesome. I wanted to say something, and I don't want to twist everybody's thinking here, but part of what we see is, cleaning up the data that we have and taking the data that we have to enable it to make better decisions. But what I see the state anyway, which is who I call on, continue to do is create more data, right? That is still not in any better shape than the old data is. And you may think that, oh, well, that means I've got to buy more, AI type technology that's, for the purpose of bringing all this data together, putting them into a big data warehouse or a data lake or whatever. I want to encourage you that there's certainly been a lot of pressure on our company over the years, and I believe our competitors as well. So you have a lot to choose from, no matter who you want to talk to about this, right? And we have baked a lot of machine learning and AI and reporting into our traditional sort of tools that we've created to help you run your business better. And if you just take recruiting, for example, what we're talking about here today, I was surprised in the last 6 months to learn, as we're talking to our customer CDCR, how much AI we have built into recruiting to ensure that you are recruiting on a diverse basis, including the fact that language cannot be used in our technology without it flagging you and saying, hey, you're not going to attract women with this language if you go out and try to hire somebody with this language. So I tell you this because I want to encourage you to get involved in policymaking around when the agencies are buying, HR modernization type technologies. Here's what you expect them to have, and here's how you expect to be able to use them. So you can kind of stop the problem, and then you can still go back and work on that issue too. Like, your plates are always full with the state, right? But at least you can stop the problem going forward, right? By buying those technologies that already have sort of stuff baked into it.
Well, I wanted to speak up a little bit too about looking at the market and looking at proposals that hit the street, and that one of the things we look at Encore is, are they thinking about data cleansing? Are they thinking about finding that those rhythms within the data that you can only see when you look very closely? And the goodness that can come from it when you put in the work beforehand versus perpetuating, bringing in data that is, quote, dirty. Right? It's just not that quality. So we've all heard garbage in, garbage out, right? And so I think taking a look at those proposals and putting in our solutions, this is something you really need to think about. It's going to pay off in spades in the future of this solution. And I think bringing that awareness that Shelby was talking about to proposals on the state side, that they really need to include this in their scope.
It's a good point. Or like Joy was saying earlier, like a dashboard is not AI, or like a dashboard is not advanced analytics. So like they'll say, we want analytics, but we'll fund a dashboard. It's like, wait a minute, hold on, wait, hold on. Yeah, you're right.
And I
Like
think-
alignment there.
And what I've noticed is it's kind of the same thing where different departments have a different idea of what AI is and machine learning. So there's definitely a lack of consistency, which is one of the reasons why I think that it's good that we're having this conversation today, just to bring in more awareness and community, because it is not consistent across the state. And I think that's something now that it's becoming very noticeable.
And it's not just government, right? So
For
today,
sure.
today, only 20% of corporate working professionals are data literate, right? So when we talk about where is dirty data coming from and cleaning it up, where it's coming from is bad business processes. So if we want to get, what we have to do to fix it downstream is we have to get upstream. And where do we fix it going upstream? We create that data literacy and data awareness from the business people who are creating those processes to understand how is this process that I'm creating, how is it also now creating data? And how am I going to use that data to measure my success? And then how am I going to use that data to build models to bring in revenue and get value from my data, right? So that all education doesn't just start from data scientists and machine learning engineers. It starts at the highest level, whether it be in the executive level, but also whether it be in marketing or finance or operations, right? And if across the industry we're at 20% today, we're going to be dealing with a lot more dirty data for a long time. And unfortunately, I don't really enjoy cleaning data that much. So.
Well, and it actually starts even before that, because as we can see, even the vaccination process, right? A doctor or a nurse can easily put the birth date in the date of the injection date. I mean, they make human errors, and that's where technology can flag. Did you really give the shot in 1969, right? And so how you can use that catch up, because that wasn't an intentional. It was just human error. Things happen. Is there ways of scanning? Is there ways to improve that quality on the upfront? And then not all data is equal. My email is not as important as a health record, right? So making sure that it's data classified and you are running. Data is compounding, but is it all quality data? I think we need to also be looking at that. And I think just in general, people aren't great, other than confidential and sensitive because of policy, but there are other classifications that you need to be looking at. And so we need to do a better job just as an industry in general.
Yeah, actually, to build on Sadie's comment, I mean, I'll be honest, even with an engineering degree, the first year I listened to data scientists talk, I had to remind myself I speak English. I couldn't understand what the heck they were saying 60% of the time. It's a lexicon, it's a learnable skill, but you have to come in where people are. And 7 years ago, I couldn't even spell AI, which is pretty pathetic. It's 2 letters. But I think most people are really intimidated by that. How do we embrace our business community leaders, our government community leaders, to learn enough to feel like it can be a tool for them? It's not a solution. It's a tool like languages, like machines are, all those things. It's just one more tool in your tool belt to use to solve business and government problems. And I think that data literacy piece is the first key to even getting people to look at it, because it's so intimidating. And I think people do not want to look stupid. I think that's a human trait, and I felt really dumb for the first 2 years.
And look where you've ended up. Now you're an expert.
Well, I'll be honest, even coming into a government setting, I feel like I reset. So I don't know how decisions are made. I don't know where I can add value. I was wondering if you're looking at externships for tech industry people that want to provide service back to the government, but don't want to run for office and don't want to spend time logging bills all day.
We should do like an 18F kind of model. Yeah. Have like technologists serving government.
You just gave Jennifer a whole nother.
I know. I'll start that, don't you worry. We'll get that going too. Well, I mean, I want to use the remainder of our time for a discussion about ways that we can work together, TechCA, Women in Data, and our government in the state of California to support the goals that the state has laid out for us, and move what I think are common goals among all of us, move them all forward. I'll start by saying Women in Data is launching a California government chapter. I'm going to hit all of you up to join because I think it's an incredibly valuable thing, and bringing this focus of women in data to the state of California, I think is incredibly valuable. It's going to not be focused just on state, but we're doing stuff in LA with the city and the county, all levels of government in California. Having a focus on data can never go wrong, honestly. But what are some other ways that, you know, we can help each other? Feel free to ask for the moon and the stars here, Joy, Adam, Leanna, because a ton of resources, a ton of knowledge in this room, just standing ready to help you guys in your mission.
I feel like there should be public-private mentorships. I mean, most of us, I ended up, you know, obviously I chose women leaders to follow, and, you know, they were my role model, and how they, you know, within government was able to be mentored. But I think there's that cross opportunity. So I don't know if Women in Data have thought about that, but it would be nice. You know, we do it a lot internally, but I just feel like there needs to be that cross-pollination and sharing, because, you know, we do it at the sales table sometimes, but we really need to do it at the,
Sure.
you know, lifting each other up, if there's at all possible that opportunity.
There certainly will be.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say bringing a diverse group like this together is always nice. And I think back to the conversation when I first jumped on about AI and ML and the art of the possible, which we do somewhat poorly in government. And I have different conversations with vendors that approach me, often just based on past relationships, right? It's not deliberate, it's not articulated, to help me learn about that art of the possible. I do see a role, right, for bringing a group like this together to work across vendors on specific issue areas to something, you know, like I get requests all the time for my all CIOs meeting from companies that want to come in and make a pitch. And I just have a hard no line on that because that's all we do every day. But if we could partner to have something broader on a certain topic, on a subject, that's something I can invite folks to and say, hey, here's something we've identified as a gap, as somewhere we need to improve, encourage people to come to that. And when you get a group together as opposed to one vendor, people feel a lot more comfortable about opening up and having that conversation around a topic. So for me, anywhere, that's somewhere I would see an opportunity to partner and do some things.
That'd be great.
Is there a way that we can have like a data committee so that if the state has an ask, like we have a committee that responds?
Sure. I mean, we could,
versus a vendor,
you
like a
know,
vendor?
we could stand up honestly on any topic that you want to talk about, whether it's like we need a timekeeping solution to we need help in AI and ML. We could pull together a group of vendors. So you're right, you're not picking a favorite. It's open to anyone who wants to come in and have a discussion. And it's leave your logo at the door. Let's talk about what's out there. It would be very collaborative, not sales pitchy. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. I have your number.
Just from a vendor perspective, I can say that I've got so much, my day is probably I can't say it's as bad as yours, but it's busy, right? I mean, with a big brand, we've got a lot of stuff going on. So if I knew more about what you need, that I prefer that. And I prefer to avoid coming at you with something that you don't want, because I'm really busy too. So I think I'd love to see TechCA take this on so we can make sure that we're connecting correctly.
Mm-hmm. And we've done that in areas. So like a great example is in security. So like Vitaly called me and said, hey, I have some issues I want to run through with the vendor community. You know, I want to talk about Log4j and, you know, a few different things, but I don't want to talk with, you know, I don't want to take 800 meetings. And so can you just pull together all the security guys and like, I'll come and meet with them. And we said, of course, we would be happy to do that. So Now we have a whole like regular cadence of meetings with Vitali for the security vendors in the IT community. So we can definitely do that. Like we would love to. So, yep, that's a good example.
Can I have an ask?
Yeah.
Too, back at it. So definitely the mentorship, we compare government with industry. That's the beauty of chapters. Bringing people together to work on projects is always open. I think one of the things that we see a lot is education is more available right now, but work experience is harder to come by. And so the more government could open data for people to work on projects or throw out a problem or provide a collaboration of a data thought or a hackathon, right? It's a win-win for both sides, right? You get free work and other people get experience. So my ask is, please provide us more data so we can get that more experience.
Joy's got her great open data portal. And so let's do some stuff with it. What do you think, Joy?
Yeah, though I want to clarify, CDT actually runs the open data portal, so I don't want to step on any toes there. I did run the open data portal in San Francisco, and we actually saw it as a key part of building the data roads, because wherever data can be publicly made available, instead of having to do inter-department exchange, sharing it with the public, make it available on open data, and it gets wrapped with an API. Brilliant, if you upload it properly. Unfortunately, we have some data sets on the open data. Our team did an audit of the open data sets on the statewide open data portal, and unfortunately, some decent percent of them are not wrapped with an API, which is unfortunate. But that will get cleaned up and fixed over time. So I will say, I actually have not, so I like the idea of framing. I think RFI squared, that's a great concept that the state has experimented around, sort of framing a problem and opening it up. In my experience, using data analytics, data science, ML to actually change business process, the data science, the AI, that's actually the easy part. Adopting a business process change is actually the hard part. So it is hard in my experience to just throw a data science problem over the fence, because whatever, you come back with a model, but how do I bake that model into the business process? And like, we actually put together a 4-part blog series on how we like to think about like data science projects that actually get adopted by business as opposed to thrown across the fence. So I just want to note with caution that those can be exciting and fun, but they don't actually change. They don't always, their probability of converting into actual change within a department or a business process, I haven't seen those conversion rates super high. So, you know, just as like a small team that's completely overwhelmed, that's not at the top of our list. And we rather instead first get all those data sets actually in machine readable format with like standards and like, hey, don't publish that in PDF, or, if you have multiple years of data, that should be a single data set where the year is a variable, right? To provide analytics. And so one of the phrases that's been bubbling in my mind is don't build Ferraris when we're, still like, clearing the dirt path roads, right? So we do have to like have a series of basics that we also have to like, check the boxes on. So not to be like a little, but I am like a little, I had to rebuild a open data program from scratch in a prior life. So I'm just a little humble before like the awesomeness of that challenge when you don't have data automation and as a service, and instead people are sort of manually uploading things. So there's just, you kind of have to build the core building blocks first.
I love it. Bill, do we have any questions or comments coming in?
We do actually have Dana Moore, who is the Chief Data Officer for Public Health.
Oh.
And she's gonna be here, so we can get her online. So how about if I bring her on as a panelist? Bear with me for just a second.
And does anyone have any comments, or this is my offer to anyone online. If anyone has any comments or wants to weigh in or has ideas, feel free. You can either type it in, or I don't know if we've got like a hand raising function. Hi, Dana.
Good afternoon. Hello, Adam, and hello, Joy. And good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for having me here. So I work in our Center for Health Statistics and Informatics at the Department of Public Health. So many people know us as the vital records people, but we also have really the cornerstone of data for all public health. And part of our work in public health too is being able to take data from 220 very diverse programs that operate at the state and also at the local level. And how do we standardize the data, normalize the data, and make it usable not only to healthcare partners, but also our local public health partners. And thinking about our workforce, trying to look beyond, I think someone said earlier, it's not just education. Lived experience is an important part of equity in data. And so how do we think about community colleges and apprenticeships, not just internships, and thinking about different types of skills in data? Other different things that we're looking at is data translators. So not just the hard skills, but can you understand what's going on in data and then be able to work with program and staff who know their communities really well. And I think that role is really undervalued and is really an important part to elevating the importance of both sides of the house. And then something else that, of course, for public health is we're very mission driven and trying to ensure that we're getting that message out there. You know, it's more than just working for government. It's more than just being, you know, part of the bigger machine. But as I tell most of my interns in public health, we have the distinct honor and privilege of touching every life that comes through California, that works in California, that lives, is born and dies in California. And that's a huge responsibility, but a huge privilege. So how do we get that message out there to bring people in? So those are things that I think about on a regular basis in my role in public health.
That's incredible. Yeah, I honestly, many of the people around this table have either worked for government in the past or have stuck around working with government because it really is a very similar mission. And while they may make more money here in the private sector, they could make a lot more money if they sold on the commercial side, but they are incredibly passionate about serving in state governments and local governments for much of the same reason, I think. And so I think just overall an incredible commitment to helping you guys and what you're doing, especially related to data and the crowd that we have in the room today focused on that. I mean, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour here, so I want to sort of turn it over first to Sadie and any concluding thoughts here or sort of next steps that you want to impart on us.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone to taking the time to have this conversation. I want to thank TechCA for the partnership on this. I think they're really leading by example. And I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the leadership we have in place who understand it's about putting the basics and the foundations in place and have a vision for how we're going to make data-driven decisions and how we're going to make it more inclusive. So I hope that this is just the start of something more and more conversation for us to continue to collaborate and continue the momentum moving forward.
Absolutely. Leanna, any concluding thoughts?
The big thing for me is technology is extremely important in making data-driven decisions, but don't forget, as we were just talking, the business side. And so someone that's been in technology and kind of gone over the aisle, understanding and appreciating the data, it allowed me to be a better leader on that programmatic side. And so don't feel like you are stuck in a single lane. You can go across the lanes and utilize that data background to do many amazing things when it comes to public policy, making great decisions. If you always want to stay a data scientist, great, but just always realize that there is something above that you can go to because your skills are very valuable across the entire spectrum. So I just want to reinforce that to everyone.
No, it's a really good point. And I heard it echoed in in pretty much everyone's remarks today, and it actually is in Joy. I'm going to quote your data strategy. In short, management and use of data cannot be abdicated to technology staff or data teams. We will weave these messages into our various objectives, both in communications, policy, and practice. So I highlighted that because it's really an important one. You're right, it spans kind of everything that government and business does. So it's an important point. Thank you for that. Rebecca, anything from the TechCA side?
Well, I can't beat that, but I think I was really excited for us to all get together and talk about building a community and the importance of the difference between data and technology. And I think we accomplished that today. And so I'm glad that we had this audience to, that we were able to kind of talk it out, put it out there and kind of just let it marinate, and maybe we can build a community around it.
Anything from our panelists on the phone? Maybe Joy will go to you first.
Oh gosh, I don't know how to wrap that up, but yeah, just excited to participate here. I think we're on a journey, right? And we're going to discover things along the way. We're going to fumble along the way, but as long as we keep learning and having conversations about it and then doing smart experimentation, we're going to see steady progress. And I'm excited to be on this particular road.
Thank you. Adam?
Nothing to add to that, just humbled to have been invited, really an honor to be here.
And Dana?
Same. This has just been a great opportunity, and I look forward to being able to work with everyone.
And P.S. we'll be hiring.
I double that.
Well, thank you so much to everyone on the phone, everyone in the room that participated, and to our panelists today. This has been an incredible discussion. We look forward to making this the first of a series. So stay tuned for more, and we appreciate your participation. Great.